Is anyone out there listening? Good. You've tuned into Lavender Town Radio, the only station brave enough to broadcast the static between worlds. Tonight, we have a story for you, a whisper from the shadows, a tale woven from the dark pages of the Pokédex that they never wanted you to read. But first, a small favor. If you find a chilling comfort in our stories, show your support by hitting the like button. It's a small click for you, but it's a beacon for us in the digital darkness. And to ensure you never miss a transmission, make sure you subscribe and ring that little bell. It helps our signal cut through the noise. All right, the signal is clear. Now, are you comfortable? Good. Let's begin.
Discipline. That is the first and final principle in my dojo. Discipline in every punch, every stance, every breath. Discipline is the fortress wall that separates victory from defeat, order from chaos. I have built my entire life upon the foundation of iron discipline. People look at me and see an unshakable gym leader, a martial artist with a will of steel. They're not wrong, but they're only seeing half of the picture, because even the most formidable fortress wall has a weak point, and mine tastes sweet, is covered in buttercream frosting and decorated with fresh, plump strawberries. Bia, are you sure you're okay? Nessa's voice, laced with a hint of concern, sounded beside me. You're looking at that eclair the same way your Graplocked looks at an opponent right before it uses Octolock. I didn't answer. I was focused. I was in the zone. Before me, on a pristine white porcelain plate, was my fifth opponent of the day. A gleaming dark chocolate eclair, pumped full of vanilla bean cream and topped with a flawless ganache. Discipline, Bia. Breathe in, breathe out. I picked up my fork, a clean, decisive cut. The first piece melted in my mouth, an explosion of bitter chocolate, sweet cream, and the soft texture of the choux pastry. A perfect victory. You're unbelievable, Nessa sighed, but there was a smile in her eyes. We came to Lumiose to support my run in Fashion Week, not for you to commit pastry genocide. A warrior must always be ready to face any challenge, I replied, my tone serious, as I savored the second bite. And this is the grandest arena. Lumiose is the pastry capital of the world. I must conquer it. Nessa just shook her head and sipped her tea. She was used to this. She knew that behind my stoic exterior was a soul that could be completely conquered by a properly made macaron. This trip, for her, was work. For me, it was paradise. We had spent the entire morning in combat. From the fluffy Jigglypuff-shaped Poke Puffs at Café Soleil to the complex slices of opera cake at the Tisserie La Notte, I had defeated them all. My discipline in enjoying sweets was as rigid as it was in the dojo. Each bite was analyzed, assessed, and vanquished. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith and Nessa had to admit she couldn't look at another cake, we arrived at a place that seemed to exist outside the frantic spin of Fashion Week. Café Sonore, a small cafe nestled in a cobblestone alley covered in lush green vines. It was quiet, quaint, and smelled of freshly roasted coffee and baking butter. This is the final opponent, I declared, pointing to a delicate little lemon tart in the display case. The final battle. I surrender, she said, holding up her hands. I have an important call with my agent. You go ahead and vanquish it. I'll be back. She left, leaving me alone with my final challenge. I ordered the tart and, instead of sitting inside, chose an old iron table in the corner of the courtyard, under the shade of an ancient tree. The air here was fresh. I sat down, preparing for my ritual. And that's when the first strange thing happened. The moment my elbows touched the cool metal surface of the table, a strange thought flickered through my mind. It wasn't my thought. The voice in my head was not my voice. It was someone else's, a man's voice, full of anxiety and an internal struggle. I can't. But my daughter is sick. The hospital bills. Just this once. No one saw. That wallet, it could fix everything. I blinked, my focus on the tart completely broken. I lifted my head, looking around. The cafe wasn't very busy. And then I saw him. The baker, a middle-aged man with a weary face and hands calloused from flour, was clearing a nearby table. A customer had just left, and on the chair, a brown leather wallet had been left behind. The baker glanced around nervously, his eyes fixed on the wallet, and I could see the conflict warring on his face. He looked toward the cash register, then back at the wallet. His hand, holding a cleaning rag, tightened. I was stunned. How could I have heard that? It had to be a coincidence, a guess based on his expression, right? He glanced around one more time, then, quick as a flash, he used the rag to sweep the wallet into the large pocket of his apron, a surreptitious movement, almost impossible to notice. But I had seen it, and I had heard it. A cold anger rose in me, not because of the theft, but because of the cowardice. But then, the voice in my head echoed again, this time with an image, a little girl in a hospital bed. Discipline told me to stand up and expose him, but something else, something I didn't often listen to, stopped me. I waited. A few minutes later, the customer returned, looking frantic. Excuse me, I think I left my wallet. I looked at the baker. His face was pale. He stood frozen behind the counter. I stood up. I didn't walk toward the customer. I walked straight to the bakery counter. The baker couldn't meet my eyes. I placed the money for my tart on the counter, then looked him straight in the eye. I didn't mention the wallet. I didn't mention the theft. I just said, my voice low enough for only him to hear, "You do not look like a coward." A true martial artist never chooses the easy path just because it is there. Honor, it's worth more than any amount of money. Think of how your daughter would see you. I don't know why I mentioned his daughter. The word just came out. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with shock and a little fear. I said nothing more. I took my tart and left the cafe. As I passed the worried customer, I just said, "Ask the baker. Perhaps he picked it up." I stood at the end of the alley, hidden in the shadows, and watched. A few minutes later, the baker walked out of the shop, wallet in hand. He bowed his head, looking deeply ashamed, and returned it to the customer. I smiled to myself. It wasn't a guess. It was a miracle, and it had come from that table. I was obsessed. For the next 2 days, I made excuses about needing a quiet place to meditate, to escape Nessa, and return to Café Sonner. I no longer cared about the pastries. I cared about the table. I had to test it. On the second day, I sat down and ordered a tea. The cafe was quite busy, filled with students from the nearby art academies. I closed my eyes, concentrating. And then it came. Another voice, this time a young woman's one, dripping with venom and jealousy. Look at her. Who does she think she is? That dress, those shoes. She always gets everything. All it would take is one little trip, a fall in front of everyone. It would be hilarious. She deserves it. I opened my eyes. I followed the direction of the thought, and saw a girl with pink hair glaring at another female student who was struggling with a tall stack of books and art supplies. The student was walking toward a small puddle on the floor that a waiter hadn't cleaned up yet. The pink-haired girl was slowly extending her leg. The discipline and reflexes of a martial artist took over. I didn't think, I acted. I shot to my feet, accidentally knocking over my own tea. "Oh, my apologies," I said loudly, then quickly moved to intercept, placing myself directly in front of the pink-haired girl, right in the other student's path. The student stopped abruptly, nearly bumping into me. "Be careful," I said to her, smiling. "The floor is a bit slippery." "Oh, thank you," she said, her face flushing with embarrassment. She walked around me and to her table, completely unaware that she had just been saved from the humiliating fall. The pink-haired girl retracted her leg, shot me a venomous glare, and turned away. I returned to my table, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. This table? It was like a superpower, a very specific and strange superpower. On the third day, the test was more subtle. The whisper this time came from a little boy, about 8 years old, sitting with his father at the next table. The boy was fidgeting with a Pokeball. "Dad's gonna be so disappointed. I dropped my real Pokeball with my scatterbug down the drain. This is just an empty one. I'm too scared to tell him. He'll yell at me for being careless." I looked at the boy, then at his father, a large man with a stern expression. I could feel the boy's fear. Once again, I acted. I stood up and walked over to their table. "Excuse me for interrupting," I said to the father. "I think I just saw a Pokeball that looks exactly like that one fall near the storm drain at the end of the alley. Was it yours?" The boy's head snapped up to look at me, his eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. The father frowned. "Really? This boy..." He looked at his son, and the sternness on his face softened just a little. "All right, come on, let's go see." They left. A few minutes later, they returned, the boy clutching his real Pokeball, his face beaming. The boy ran up to me. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're a superhero." I just ruffled his hair and smiled. I was certain now the table had a strange ability. It didn't read minds indiscriminately. It seemed to only pick up on strong intentions, secrets that were weighing on people's minds, actions that were about to happen. I didn't understand why. Maybe it was the metal of the table or the ancient tree above it. I didn't know, but I knew I had a responsibility. I had become the silent guardian of this little corner of Lumiose. And I thought it would just be fun little games like that. Small secrets, small acts of help. I was deadly wrong. On the fourth day, the day before Nessa's biggest show, she dragged me out of my hotel room. "That's enough, Bia," she said, pulling my arm. "You've meditated enough. Today, you're having coffee with me. I need a friend, not a monk." I laughed. "All right, I know just the place." I led her to Café Sonore. The place had become familiar to me. I led her to my favorite table. "Sit," I said with a mysterious smile. "I want you to try something." Nessa looked at me suspiciously, but sat down anyway. "Try what? Did you find a new type of croissant?" "Just wait," I said, sitting across from her. I watched her. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. Nessa just smiled, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere, but then her smile vanished. Her eyes went wide. The cheerful look on her face was instantly replaced by shock and a profound sense of dread. She leaned forward, grabbing my hands across the table. Her own hands were ice cold. "Bia," she whispered, her voice trembling. I just heard something. This isn't a joke. It's horrible." I held my breath. What did you hear? Nessa swallowed hard. I heard a voice, a young man. His voice, it was emotionless, cold. It said, "This is the last chance, the show tonight. If they still laugh, if they still call me a sick faggot, if my work is still rejected, then that's it. I'm done. The bridge on North Boulevard looks high enough. It'll be quick. No one will have to see me anymore." A heavy silence fell over us. The sound of birds chirping in the tree, the chatter of people around us, it all seemed to fade away. All that was left was the weight of that whisper. It wasn't a small secret. It wasn't petty theft or a mean prank. It was a self-proclaimed death sentence. "Oh my God," I whispered. "Bia, I work in this industry," Nessa said, her voice urgent. "I know how brutal it can be, especially for people who are different. The prejudice, the pressure, it can destroy someone. This thought, it's coming from someone involved in Fashion Week, a designer, a model, a makeup artist, someone who is pinning all of their hopes on tonight's show." She looked at me, her blue eyes filled with fear. "And if that hope is crushed, he's going to die." My fun game was over. The table's miraculous superpower had just become a horrific burden. It had let us hear a person's final cry for help, but it didn't tell us who he was. The show was set to begin in a few hours. In a sea of thousands of faces, we had to find a single dying soul, and we had absolutely no idea where to start.
The transmission is ending. The static is creeping back in. Thank you for listening to Lavender Town Radio. Remember, the Pokédex only tells you half the story. We're here for the other half. Your thoughts on this story are valuable. They tell us what scares you. Leave them in the comments. To help us continue broadcasting from the abyss, please hit the like button and, most importantly, subscribe. More subscribers mean a stronger signal, and a stronger signal means more secrets can be revealed. This is Lavender Town Radio, signing off. Be sure to check your shadows. You never know what might be listening.